together for timeout. Don't bring up gender, okay? And Eleanor Scott.
Hi everyone! Oh my gosh, this is super exciting. I want to thank Scott so much for having me here, and yeah, it does feel like we've known each other for a long time because so many emails have passed between us between then and now. So, I'm very happy to see you. Thank you for coming out on a Sunday. And I want to tell you today the story of how I lost my favorite job from the coolest, hippest place I have ever worked. Yay, hooray, loneliness, sadness, disappointment. So, I was so excited to get this job because what I'm interested in first, I want to start with the moments that when something really horrible happens, when we lose something, there is that hyper focus of random details. Can anyone think of when you had a terrible breakup, or you lost a job, or, I don't know, spitballing, like terrible election results? We kind of remember these insignificant details, they suddenly become sort of blown up. And when I got fired from this amazing job, I was actually on another contract gig. I was far away from home in Austin, Texas. And I got the call. I was in a crowded restaurant. I thought it was a promotion. And I stepped outside, and even though it was January, I felt that velvet, warm air of Texas. And the whole time I'm listening to my boss fire me, I am listening to cicadas. So it's very vivid in my mind. And then the other detail is when I walked into the pristine corporate hotel room where I was staying. And you know, it's just like void of everything. There's crisp sheets and plumped up pillows, and I thought, yeah, this is a good place to cry the night away. And I did. And while I cried and cried, I actually was so grateful that it was me going through this heartbreak and not my 9-year-old son. Because, oh my God, this feels awful. I mean, it feels like a horrible breakup. It's just awful heartbreak and sadness and gosh, I really haven't felt like this in such a long time. And that's good, right? Because that means my life is pretty beautiful. I just lost this horrible job. It's the best job. And now a big chunk of my annual income just evaporated. And my family's gonna tell me I have to go back to teaching because I'm such a gifted teacher. Oh. Don't you love fake crying? I love fake crying. Is there, because, you know, if it's fake, then it is about something that actually really happened, then, you know, it means catharsis. Which is why theater is relevant and important. Thank you, no, just kidding. My son said, you know, Mom, you're so good at fake crying. I think it's one of your signatures. But can I get so this is a silent connection. It's something I do with the kids. Silent connection, if anyone's into the fake crying. I love it. So, yeah, so why was this my very favorite job? Well, okay. My favorite job in all the world, truth, is being my son's mother. That's my favorite job, right? This is my favorite paid job. I actually got money for it. And because I had been for 25 years a writer, artist, and a teacher, I know you're like, well, why would she need another job? She must be rich. Yeah. I have taught French and creative writing and drama, and I've made camps for kids. I love the K-8 crowd. Big fan of the kids. They're geniuses, you know. They're just like little Picassos, Elena Ferrentes, and Louise Bourgeois running around playing Foursquare. But this job was exotic because I got to be in the posh and fantastical world of corporate tech. I know. The building I worked in was like a palace, like Versailles. There was corporate techwear, you know, Versailles. So there's floor to ceiling whiteboards. I still really love that. And, you know, Post-it notes as far as the eye can see. Office supplies forever. And then those photo badges that were on zip lines. Fancy. So, and I had been a visitor to this foreign exotic land because my brother is an engineer and he abides in this professional world all the time. And I would always come and visit him and wait at reception, and I would just be in awe of all of the choices of gum and mints. And so I was always kind of like Oliver Twist, like, is it okay if I take some of the gum? And the admin would always look at me like I was kind of special and say, yeah, that's what it's there for. And I say, oh yeah, it's just, I'm a teacher, so, you know. So I felt like I won the lottery in 2012 when I got hired as an actor. Yeah, you heard me right, an actor at a seriously swankadelic corporate tech place. And this place was even more hip and fabulous than the place with the gum. So, what did I actually do at this job? I worked in a learning and development department. This L&D department had an array, many courses for managers and how to be a good manager in this hip tech fabulous moment. And so with each class, there was a role play exercise that went along with it. They hired actors to learn to be different characters, and different characters in different scenarios taught different lessons about being a good manager and communicating. Now, the person who taught the class would then become what was called the facilitator in the role play exercise, and a facilitator is kind of like a director on stage. So then the facilitator and the actor were a teaching team, and we worked with groups from about 10 to 20 people, 10 to 30 people, average 20-ish. And in the 4 years that I did this work, I would say about 85% of the participants or the students were men. About 65% were engineers. There were a lot of accents from all over the globe. There's a lot of ink, a lot of facial hair, witty t-shirts, flannel. Not a lot of inspiring footwear. And is it clear? Does everyone sort of see? Bring it in, even if, because this was a new world for me, so I just wanted to make sure. Okay, so basically, I got really well paid to do an improv exercise, a really wonderful improv exercise that taught meaningful lessons about communication. And I was fed like a foreign diplomat. Right? So then you come out after improv and be like, oh, tandoori chicken in mini naan wraps, and here's some parsnip gratin. Oh, or how about some eggplant succotash that be finished with a bell pepper coulis? And my favorite, grilled stone fruit and burrata tart drizzled with balsamic. Oh, right? That was one of my favorites. And pescafor for dessert. Yeah, it was basically like going to a spa. It was amazing. So the other great thing, there are many great things about why I love the shop. Food, great. Improv, excellent. And then I got to be part of a really progressive and creative teaching team. And it was wonderful. So one of the many revelatory processes that we did that was really eye-opening for me is that after every role play, we would get together immediately, face-to-face, no emails. Emails are evil, just FYI. I mean, to give feedback. Recipe for disaster. So we would get together face-to-face right after the role play, and we would get and give feedback. Right then, quick and dirty. So it would be like, hey, Eleanor, you used a lot of idioms in the session, and there were a lot of people from Asia. I think some of it went over their heads. Oh yeah, good point. Or, hey, Eleanor, you got way too mad in round 2. Or, hey, E, you didn't get mad enough in round 2. You gotta ratchet it up. Because different facilitators would have different feedback. Or I would ask, I need more information on geofencing. I'm feeling a little not the sharpest knife in the drawer on that. Or can you just explain to me why an on-device transfer is so sexy? And invariably, the facilitator would sit down with me, draw diagrams, explain the whole process, whether it was some engineering thing or whatever. Then we would role play to make sure I had it down. And it was always inspiring and helpful. Now, this was in stark contrast to some of the dealings I had at one of my other jobs when I was teaching art in a public school. Technically I'm not certified, which means, I don't know what that means, but I'm not certified to teach in the public schools in California, so the classroom teacher would have to be present while I taught art. And mostly that was fabulous. I made great new friends, one of them's here. And there was, however, one teacher who was not a big fan of mine. I didn't get it at the time, but I was a convert to this new feedback model. So I would I thought, oh, maybe this will work. Maybe I should. So I went up to her after class one day and I said, so, do you have any feedback on the class and how it went? Anything you noticed or we could change? And she just said, yeah, that's good. Oh, okay. Well, turns out it wasn't good because I found out she didn't want me to come back the next year. So we had a big huddle meeting with all the other teachers and the head of the school. And I said to her, well, what can I do so that maybe we could make it more palatable for you? And she would say, maybe just don't talk. And I said, don't talk? She said, yeah, just don't talk. Just show the children what the art exercises, and then they can just do it. Well, when I told this story to my facilitator friends at the job spot, they were horrified. They laughed with me. They're like, oh yeah, Eleanor, don't talk. That's a perfect idea. In fact, maybe just don't be there at all. I was like, I know, right? And then this other facilitator friend said, that is ridiculous. I wish I had been there at that meeting to give her a piece of my mind. Well, it's their loss. You're here with us. And I felt so vindicated. I felt so recognized. And it reminded me of a small moment that I had when I was in India 20 plus years ago. So, has anyone been to India? Anyone? Yeah, right? Okay, so you'll probably agree. India is beyond beautiful. Beyond beautiful. You just move your eyes 1 millimeter and you see something that's going to change your life. It's so sparkling and spectacular. So, 3,000-year-old mango tree that is also the center of a temple. Trucks rumbling by full of roses and marigolds perfuming the air. Piles of tika powder everywhere. And beautiful saris. Cobras coming out of baskets. Monkeys chattering in trees. Painted elephants. And of course, the elephant-headed god Ganesh, who is the remover of obstacles. Because, yeah, there's plenty of chaos well, there's plenty of chaos everywhere, but there's lots of chaos in India. But in India, they don't freak out about it. It's just there. You know, it's just like unadulterated energy, like Pema Chodron talks about. So, this one day, I was in Rajasthan, in the town of Pushkar, that was hosting a camel fair, which is bananas cool, if you ever have an opportunity. And I was walking into town one day, and I came around the corner, and on a concrete platform, there were a group of sadhus. Sadhus are Hindu ascetics. They are nomadic monks that relinquish all worldly goods to devote themselves to meditation. So they are incredibly grounded beings. In fact, I'll never forget, just watching them sit is kind of calming because they've got that, and I hadn't started meditating yet, but I saw what could happen. They have this straight up and down spine, and their chest is open without being like puffed out and cocky. It's just beautiful and open. You can tell that their seats are so grounded, it just goes right to the center of the earth. And I was walking and I saw a sadhu and he caught my eye. And I looked at him and he looked at me and he smiled and I smiled back. And his eyes were so clear, and there was no twirly narrative, there was no longing, it was just full of warmth and understanding. It was as if his eyes were sort of this connection to universal love and light. And by looking and smiling at me, he was sharing it with me. I can still see his eyes, and I just felt so recognized. I felt that he saw me. And in moments like this, you know, when you have someone who just loves you and sees you for exactly who you are, it's such a relief. I don't know if anyone, you don't have to lean in, you don't have to lean out. You know, have you ever seen like people taking selfies? And they're like getting the right angle. It's like the opposite of that. Just right here. And it was such a gift. In India, when you greet someone, you say namaste, and that means I salute the divine within you. And I feel like that's what this sadhu gave to me, is that salute. And it's been in my heart ever since. And I definitely felt that with this group of people at Hip Tech Fabulous. These facilitators, they really made me feel grounded and connected and recognized. It was great. Now, from the sublime to the ridiculous, there's another reason I love this job. It was a very clear and present break from the trading floor of parenting a small child, right? Because get this, at Hip Tech Fabulous, there are only adults. No strollers, no plastic sand toys. And if you see Legos, they are ironic. No one has covers on their phones or their iPhones. Glue. No one has covers on those phones because there are no children to drop them on the ground or tired parents to have them slip, right? And if there are parents there, they are in disguise as calm and smart adults with clean hair. You arrive at Hip Tech Fabulous in the morning. There is a beautiful spread of breakfast on a white tablecloth. Coffee, tea, yogurt, granola, and then a big white bowl of beautifully washed berries.
Little spoon on the side for serving.
I mean, I have berries, sure. Moldy ones at the back of my fridge that I forgot about from last week. Because that's parenting, right? I mean, look, I love being a parent. I truly, truly do. I mean, you would have to, because it is so cripplingly hard, right? And you say the most ridiculous things to children. When my son was 6, he came home from first grade and he said, "Mama, I got a certificate for citizenship today." And I was just like, "Oh yeah? That's great. Who else got a certificate for citizenship? Did everyone in the first grade get a certificate?" And he looked at me like, "I am so disappointed." He said, "I don't know, Mama. I don't know who else got this certificate." I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry." Yeah, I mean, because you're constantly apologizing as a parent, because you're constantly making missteps. Here's something that I'm still apologizing for, and it happened when he was 4. So, take your mind back if you have other parents. Yeah. Have parents in the audience right now? So 4 years old, nightmare all morning, complete and utter nightmare. It was a Saturday, and he had lost everything. So he had lost his Legos for a week, he'd lost his Magna-Tiles, he'd lost his favorite excavators to dig. No. So, as you know, in behavior modification parlance, I was what's called bankrupt. I had nothing else to bargain with. But, didn't matter. We had to go to that birthday party because I had to talk to other adult humans. Yeah, so we get to the party and there's a bouncy house. Yay. I mean, God praise for bouncy houses. And he runs in and goes into the bouncy house, and I sit down next to my friend Lauren, and we just sort of starting to talk when her daughter Brooke comes out of the bouncy house, and she is sad. And she crawls into her mother's lap and she says that my son kicked her in the bouncy house on purpose. So I had to go over to the bouncy house and use the scary quiet voice. And he was bouncing. And he knew he had to come out of the bouncy house. So he bounced down. You know how there's that little door. And then I took him over here to the interrogation part of the grass where I'm out of earshot of all the other parents. And he confirmed yes, he had indeed kicked Brooke on purpose in the bouncy house. And then he just shrugged. Oh, yes! Oh! But I had nothing, remember? Nothing. I was bankrupt. So like a true improvisationalist performer, I did follow one of the first rules in improv. I said the first thing that came into my head. So I went back to him and I said, "Okay, look, you want to be my son for a second? Yeah. Okay, you know what? You are going to need to shape it up, okay? You need to shape it up, because if you don't, I'm going to take you to a special doctor." He's 4 years old. He looks at me, he's like, "What kind of special doctor, Mama?" I didn't know what kind of special doctor. I had an image of a doctor with a huge hypodermic needle aimed at his brain. Didn't say that out loud. But rein that in. So I said, you don't even know what kind of special doctor. But you know what? We're going to go to your pediatrician and she will find us a special doctor. But now you're in timeout. And I whipped around and looked at my friends. And the minute I looked at my friends, I started laughing. And I was just like, "You're not going to believe what I just said to my kid." And we laughed all afternoon, which was great because that saved me from a sleepless night thinking I had consigned my child to therapy for the rest of his life. And so grateful for my friends. They brought me down and said it was going to be okay. Brings me to another really important reason that I adored this job. I made a dear and lifelong friend at this job. At first, I had a star crush on him because he was a total style icon. Granted, as you know, that was a low bar at Tech Value. But he would turn heads even in New York. He did actually. I was with him in New York one time and he literally turns heads. He's super handsome, super put together, like old world gentlemanly, but liberal leaning. It's awesome. These are some of his Tom Fords. And I was always a little bit of a gasper when I saw what he was wearing for shoes. More importantly, this brilliant man created the role play exercise that we were doing at Hip Tech Fabulous. And I could do a whole separate show on that because as an educator for 25 years, this is one of the most impressive pedagogical formats I've ever come across, ever. It's amazing what can be learned when you have a supportive experiential experience. And one of the wonderful things is he employed, in this model, you employ another very important tenet of improv, which is the most important person on stage is not you, it's your scene partner. Your scene partner is the beginning and the end, the alpha and the omega. And so, as your job on stage is to make your scene partner look good. It's kind of deep when you think about it. I mean, I feel like it could really be, a great rule for everything in life. So, yeah, and actually the more I did it, the more I really loved it. And then also, as we worked together as facilitator and actor, we became closer. We both realized that the state of Maine is a spiritual anchor for us. We love musical theater. We love theater in general. And so after a year, I was brave enough to invite him to be my date at a very fancy wedding. And he said yes. Not only did he say yes, he said, yes, and what should we wear? And, oh, where are we going to go for dinner? And, hey, what about those friends you were telling me about? Aren't they going to the wedding? Could we all go together? Gosh, it was the best date. Okay, spoiler alert, we did not kiss. We would have if he was not my boss or married to a man. Still like a shooting star date. And I learned even today, I learned so much from him about love and life. And perfect example, he arrived to pick me up for the wedding and I apologized. He said, I still have to put on my makeup. And he said, no, you don't. You look absolutely beautiful. Yeah. And I believed him because he meant it. Yeah, he made his scene partner look good. So not long after the wedding, he got a job on the other side of the planet. So we don't see each other very often, but when we do, we pick up right where we left off, and it's wonderful. It's one of those friends, and it's like, I don't know, like Ben Franklin with the key and the kite. You see it, right? So we both love that line, Jeff and I. So yeah, Jeff, such a sweetheart. So what happens when you are in a great job with incredible colleagues, a good friend, an amazing educational model? What happens when all those things are in play? Well, the truth will out, right? The truth appears and smiles, or she terrifies us. And at Hip Tech Fabulous, the truth came out. So the Learning and Development Department decided to create a new character to teach specific lessons about giving feedback and getting feedback, mostly giving. So they created a character, Tyler. And Tyler was an A+ player, basically a genius coder, okay? Big coder, big darling of the leadership at Hip Tech Fabulous, the senior VPs and the VPs. They loved Tyler. However, Tyler was not so good with people on her or his own team. Not socially graceful, so was alienating some of her peers. Does this sound familiar? Does this sound like people have experienced this? Okay. It's a real thing, right? So I actually had a bit of a hard time finding this character, finding Tyler, because I am socially graceful. It's kind of my thing. I know when to bring out the charm, how much. It's kind of my superpower, right? So I had to kind of somehow get in, and that's when the work begins. I think actually one of the beautiful things about being able to be an actor is that it affords us opportunities to be more compassionate to people who are not like us. I think it's actually a pretty sacred practice, frankly. So, and Tyler, this character, definitely afforded that for me. So the more I dug, the more I thought, well, wait a minute. There are times when my social graces evaporate. For instance, if I experience people who are not great teachers, if they're even just kind of mediocre, I'm not very polite about that. I'm not charming. Charming girl kind of goes away. And if my son or my son's contemporaries, actually really anyone, are victims of bad teaching, I can't really even see straight. So, for instance, Betsy DeVos, or Voss, or whatever her name is, if I think about her too much, and I'm not a violent person, but I start to wonder about searching on YouTube for how to make a shiv, how to make it effective in the kidney. Oh. But, that's like that. I'll never be invited to sit next to Betsy DeVos at dinner, so we're good. Aha! So that is Tyler, right? That is Tyler. I found her. And, tiny side note, mine and Tyler's passion about the skills that we practice is a manifestation of our love and devotion to these practices, right? So if you're teaching a class around management, you want to teach people where the behavior comes from rather than just judging it. Yeah, right. Easy, you'd think. So, great. So I found my Tyler, and there were moments when it was truly magical. For instance, one time I was sitting and role-playing Tyler, and I was talking to this guy, and he had asked me, what motivates you, Tyler? And I felt open enough to say to him, I really think about, I just dream about that someday someone's grandchild somewhere will read some of my code, and then because of that, they'll be inspired to go on and build their own code that will eventually solve global warming. And the guy I was talking to sighed. He was getting actually a little misty. And he said, that's exactly why I show up to work every day. Improv is magical, right? And that was awesome. However, there was another thing, another strain that started happening, and very different. There started to be a lot of anger directed toward my Tyler. It was kind of, it was felt out of the blue. It just felt really weird to me. Like, where is this coming from? Like, all of a sudden, I remember I was talking about how my code, as Tyler is saying, well, my code is, I think about it a lot. It's very important to me, so I know that there are not any mistakes in it. And a guy laughed incredulously, like, and then another time, there was an implication when Tyler said, well, this VP wanted me to come and solve this really complicated problem, possible zero-day exploit, And the people didn't believe my Tyler. They said, well, maybe she's lying. She's rough. So I compared notes because, Tyler, notice the name, it's a gender specific name. Tyler could be played by a woman or a man. And I had a friend who was an actor, a man, and we compared notes, and he said he wasn't getting any of that. He wasn't getting any of that vitriol. So I said, well, why don't we do a little social experiment? So we decided, because there was one day when we were both there at the same time, he was in one room as Tyler and I was in another room as Tyler, we decided to both drop the F-bomb. Now, we didn't do F-you, because that was just too much, right? So we just decided to say, this is effing ridiculous, that kind of thing. And then we came back and compared notes. And in the room where my friend was doing drop the F-bomb, nothing. No one batted an eyelash, none of it. But when I dropped the F-bomb, all hell broke loose. So is it okay? I'm gonna get into your space because I want to show someone. Is it all right?
Of course.
It is.
I did that in VR and I got the same result.
See? Oh my gosh. Well, maybe you had this happen too. So I dropped the F-bomb, and this guy got into my face, and we're acting, but we're friends. There we go. There. And he said to me, literally wagging his finger, he said, "How dare you speak to me in that tone of voice? That is not appropriate. I am your manager, and that is disrespectful." And in the same breath, he was telling me I had to do a better job being more kind to my teammates. What? And my Tyler and me were completely baffled, right? Because, well, one, just starters, the whole thing about Tyler not being disrespectful to her other teammates, she didn't see that. Remember, she didn't pick up social cues, and nobody had gone over it with her in a compassionate way. And so she thought she was doing her job. If she saw someone's code and it wasn't right on her team, she thought she was doing them a favor by correcting it. And then she was kind of baffled, as was I, by the fact that, and she said this out loud to the group, well, why is it okay for people that are not my gender to use such colorful language, but then when I use it, it's disrespectful? Well, then everything exploded again, and this one guy crossed his arms and he's like, she can just F off to blank. Another hip tech fabulous moment. And then another time, because I kept going with this experiment, someone said, let's just fire her. This bitch is driving me crazy. Another woman called me a bitch. Yeah. So the message that I received is that because my Tyler is brilliant and hardworking and adding value to this company and this world, but is not captivating and soft and purring the way some people think women should be, she's a bitch and should be fired. Because my Tyler is frustrated by the double standard and is calling out inequity, she's a bitch and has to go. Because my Tyler is not young and not hot and not demure. She's a bitch. So now, when somebody calls a hardworking, powerful, outspoken woman a bitch, when someone calls a woman who's an introvert, who is shy and has a hard time, speaking out, a bitch, when someone calls the former Democratic nominee for president former Secretary of State a bitch. She's calling me a bitch. And in that room, there were 30 people in that room that day. And no one came to my Tyler's defense. No one. Not the facilitator. It was his position to do that, and he did not. The facilitator was the VP of the whole Learning and Development Department. He said nothing, did nothing. I just need to do a side note because I found out that this VP, who's still there, just mind-boggling, when he found out that Trump actually was elected, he started crying because he was so sad. And I'm like, in the words of Beyonce, no, hell no. You don't get to cry. Your ass helped him get elected with how you're treating women. So no. Back to the story. Believe it or not, after the really rough session, the VP of Learning and Development did not have a cozy feedback session with me. Turns out he doesn't really like to do feedback. No, he did not. However, he sent his minions, 3 different men, to tell me his feedback. And the feedback was, Eleanor, so really, gender is not relevant to this particular class. And I thought to myself, I wonder what other large societal constructs are also irrelevant to a class on communication. And then they went on to say, so maybe just don't bring up gender. And I said, oh wait, I'm not bringing it up. It's just kind of bubbling up to the surface because it's there. And they interrupted me and said, no, just don't bring it up, okay? So I stopped. I didn't bring it up. I let myself be muzzled. I realized this is a betrayal, and I apologize. I apologize to my son. I apologize to the kids I teach. And I apologize to you. I find at times like this, Pema Chodron is really great. And I'm actually going to ask you a favor. We're going to try a little Pema Chodron moment. Well, so Pema Chodron is anyone know Pema? Oh, right on. She is, for those of you who don't know, she's a Tibetan Buddhist nun. She's also a brilliant writer. And I learned from her, from one of her books called Awakening Compassion, a meditation practice called Tonglen. And as a favor, I'm going to ask us all to do it, just for a little quick minute. It's very, very simple. We got to get on our, Nike is good for this too. So our sadhu, nice spine up and down, rooted seat. And it's actually very counterintuitive when you think about Tonglen, because what you're going to do, it's a breathing meditation. You breathe in the tough stuff. You breathe in the shame, or you breathe in the frustration. You breathe in the brokenheartedness. You breathe it in. And then on the exhale, you're going to exhale the antidote. So you're going to exhale calm. You're going to exhale acceptance. You're going to exhale happiness. And what's cool about that is when you exhale, that's what you're putting out into the world, and then eventually it's going to come back to you, okay? So no big deal, just it would be a favor to me. So we'll just do a couple rounds. Thank you. It's such a gift. Yeah, that's so you can do that in traffic. And one of Pema's points is, I guess a lot of her big teachers in the Tibetan Buddhist scene, they were just like, that's too hard. It's too hard for common people to do. And her whole point was, no, everyone should be able to do it whenever they need to. And it can really change an energy. I don't know, if you just take a minute, the energy in this room is gorgeous. It is. So, thank you. Which is good, because we're getting to other stuff that's not so gorgeous. So, back to the story. I continued to do my pinioned version of Tyler. And interestingly, I didn't bring up the gender stuff, even though it was right there in the middle of the room. Didn't bring it up. And the way it manifested, my frustration at being silenced, manifested as tears. I cried a lot in the role play. And I got a lot of accolades for the truth about my performance. And I was so moving. From participants, from the other facilitators, for everybody. It was like, wow, you're so in it. It's so real. And it was real. It is real. It makes me sad. And at the same time, I was reading the Elena Ferrante quartet of novels. It starts with My Brilliant Friend. I don't know if there are any friends out there. So she writes, she's an Italian author. She writes about these two friends over the course of their life. And it takes place in Naples, Italy, and they're abjectly poor in the 1960s. I know, it could be my life. She could be telling that. But actually, so there's one scene in the beginning of book 3 when Lenu, who is the protagonist, she's the main character, is at a dinner that's celebrating a book of hers that's been published, and she's just had her first reading. Now, okay, it is a miracle that this woman, made it to middle school. A lot of people in her neighborhood only made it through elementary school. She made it not only to middle school, high school, university. Now she was a published author. And all these men are sitting around the table at the restaurants, and they're from the intelligentsia and the socialist revolutionary movement, and they're heaping praises on Nico, another young man who had stood up for Lenu, the author, the woman, at the reading because he told off a critic of hers. And then they go on in their spirited way, the men, to talk about what are we going to do next, what are the next steps for the revolution, and how can we really get it to come through. When meanwhile, there was the revolution personified in Lenu, but excluded. So she felt awkward, she fled to the bathroom. And she looked in the mirror, she found a couple zits. She didn't think her dress looked great, she felt fat. She just decided she was ugly and stupid because she didn't know what to say and how to make her way into this conversation about politics. It just made me want to reach into the book and give her a hug and salute her because her self-loathing was misdirected. So I guess it turns out that there are a lot of things in common with 1960s Italy and 2016 Silicon Valley. Felt very connected. So 10 months after I'd been told not to bring up gender, I came into work and I was working with a facilitator and he was okay. Kind of mediocre, nothing to write home about. I found out later that he was like a henchman to the big VP. Should have known. Anyway. So anyway, but I did my job. I was professional. I went in. I checked in before the role play. I wanted to know about the group and if there were any specific instructions. No, all's good. So great. Now pause. I need to tell you a few things just to review about this job that I averred from my gaze. I was a contractor. If I went down there, I would go down like twice a month. If I went down twice a week, it was rare. Or a couple more times than that a month, but not much, right? I was never invited to a staff meeting, ever. And then there were the holiday party uninvites. All of us actors, I think all of us contractors that worked there would get a letter right before the holidays every year that said we were in no way invited, nor should we go near any of the holiday parties at Hypnotize Shop. Not even kidding. Every year, like we'd forget. So it's like, put the velvet jumpsuit back on the rack. So I wasn't part of the team. But because I have this muscular imagination, and because I wanted to feel like a part of the team, I decided to look at my connection to, rather than my colonization from this cool people clique. And because of that, I made a massive political mistake. So, just to set the scene, in this role play, one of the constructs that's in this role play is that the participants and the facilitator can call what's called a timeout. And at that point, the actor kind of goes to sleep like this. And it's just like a simulator, right? We're like, the actors are like flight simulators. And so when we go to sleep, they can talk amongst themselves and strategize about what to do next, or the facilitator will make comments, right? So I'm here like this in timeout. I can't say a thing. I can't respond. It's like I'm dead. So I'm like this. The facilitator, mediocre guy, is just like says to the people, can you believe how arrogant Tyler is being? She's just saying and doing all these ridiculous things. I mean, what would you say to HR? She's so arrogant and awful. And again, I'm like this, thinking. So after the session is over, I see him skittering back to his office. No cozy feedback session. Call him over. And I say to him, hey, so I was really confused in round 2 when you said that Tyler was really arrogant and ridiculous. Because I just felt like I was kind of judging her personality. And I feel like, aren't we supposed to try to uncover why the behavior is happening? Isn't that our job? And I mean, don't you think we want to break the habit of name calling and get them into a more figuring out where the behavior is coming from so that can change? And while I'm doing this, he's just and I'm an actor, so I understand physical cues. And so I say, okay, well, maybe you have some feedback. I mean, what did you notice? And maybe we can figure it out. Maybe I missed something. Any ideas? And he was just like this. And he reminded me of a spoiled little child, right? I'll tell you who needs a special doctor. And I know who the special doctor is. It's Rebecca Solnit. Yeah. She wrote Men Explain Things to Me. So, so a week later, the call was set up when I was in Austin, Texas. And there I was in Austin on the phone, and my manager heaped compliments on me. I knew it was going to be bad. Ruinous empathy ahoy. And then he fired me. And the grounds that he said for firing me was, I was not believable in the role of Tyler. I'm gonna say it again. This is always so, it actually strikes me every time. You were not believable in the role of Tyler. Now, another very important tenet of improv is that you always say yes and. So what that means is when you're given an offer, you accept the offer and then you build on it. So if my offer is, you are not believable in the role of Tyler, how do I say yes and to that? It's a challenge. I think I would say, you know what has just become unbelievable to me? Learning and development department, every little thing you teach. All those perfectly pixelated slides with just one word on them, trust or team. You have just rendered lies and jokes. Yeah. And I have helped you sell that hypocritical stuff. You're just snake oil salesman. Congratulations. You have invented a new kind of stupid, a damage you can never undo kind of stupid, an open all the cages in the zoo kind of stupid. Truly, you didn't think it through kind of stupid. So I'm out. Time out. Because I got too much other stuff to do. And I am a writer, a performer, and a teacher with a very messy house, and no money, and a few good ideas, and a very happy child. Lo sono la rivoluzione! I am the revolution, motherfucker! I still want to keep going, even though it's not part of the part. Raise a glass to freedom, something you can never take away, no matter what they tell you. And then I really wanted to do this. I think I can do it. Middle fingers up, raise them hands high, wave them in his face, saying boy bye, boy bye. Okay, I'm not Beyonce, but I love her. Namaste, babe, namaste. So, yeah, that's just me having fun. But now we're gonna I wanna continue to do some theatrical tonglen and transmute some of the pain. Because heck, let's look. I lost this fabulous job, it's true. And I need to find a solid source of income, yes. But if I move my eyes just 1 millimeter, what do I see? Because of this job, I saved a good amount of money, and I saved some airline miles. Because of this job, I have a sweet, generous friend, guy with nice shoes. He moved to London and offered generously to have us come and stay. So on a whim, I took my beautiful son to London and Paris. He is 11, and he is a miracle. Our trip was perfect. And on one of the many magical days, after a morning of reading and writing and pain au chocolat, we walked to the Musée Picasso, the Picasso Museum. I told him that Picasso was a rare artist and that he never doubted any of his artistic impulses. He never questioned whether to stop, start, or continue a certain work of art. He trusted his instincts. So we sat side by side and sketched all afternoon in the glorious, cool quiet of inspired genius. Paintings, sculptures, prints, carved pebbles, found objects. We lost all track of time. We were so enthralled by the work and so delighted to be there together in Paris. And there in the Musée Picasso, I looked over at him standing by a found object vase of flowers. And he looked at me, and I saw his happy, clear-seeing eyes. And I realized that the Indian sadhu, wise and loving, has been there all along. Look a sadhu in Paris. And knowing that he is there with me now, with me all the time, it gives me the courage to seek out new sadhus. I look forward to seeing you.